At this conference, someone was talking about, well, if you take the more spiritual or moral approach, such as all nature has rights, or all life is sacred, or all life is sentient, and you try to bring it down to the practical, it kind of closes you down and the energy's gone. And I would say that doesn't have to be. I think that's one of the mistakes we seriously make, that we keep the spiritual or ethical separate from the practical. The practical has to be infused with the ethical and the spiritual. So I hope in the future, as this evolves, we're not going to get too lawyerly in lots of little details, which is also necessary, but never losing sight of what you were really trying to accomplish.
Yeah. With the mechanistic approach, law has also become very mechanistic. But if you look at how law is held in indigenous societies, for example, law always has a spiritual basis,
Right.
and is always about governing relationships in a way that creates harmony.
Right.
And another thing is it takes into account all of our relationships.
That's what I'm trying to encourage in this.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's a very spiritual approach that requires recognizing how we relate to ourselves, how we relate to each other, and how we relate to all of life. And with what we're bringing in with nature's rights, it isn't just about the legal personality and the rights on its own, and we just put it in the legal system and see what happens. No. It comes with a holistic framework of law called Earth jurisprudence. And in Earth jurisprudence, we see that instead of, having people, planet, and profit as interlinking circles and sustainability happening somewhere in the middle, we say we have a context. Human beings do not exist in a vacuum. Our right to life does not exist in a vacuum. How can we have a right to life if that which gives us life doesn't have a corresponding right to life? So we take the context of the Earth, which is a subsystem of the cosmos, because the Earth doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's part of an interconnected cosmic system. Human society is a subsystem of the Earth system, and it's only one subsystem. Bear societies, earthworm societies, they're all subsystems of the Earth system. The human economy is a subsystem of the human society. And so correspondingly, we say that there should be a hierarchy of rights, just as you have a natural hierarchy of systems, as you can't have an economy without human society. You can't have human society without the integrity of the web of life.
Just a side comment, you were talking about bear societies and worm societies. They actually are. It's a wonderful way to begin to think about things. They have their own entire integrity and units and lives and passions and interests and interactions with the earth.
Yeah. When I studied zoology at university, and I was always fascinated with the parallels between human society and insects. Except insects seem to have it all together, They seem to have it so perfect, the hive of a bee, eusocial insects, they call them. And I was like, wow, we're like eusocial insects. We organize ourselves in very similar ways, in patterns. You could, and also I could never really understand why human beings, and science in particular, was trying to judge a non-human species by human criteria. And I did my dissertation in language in primates. And, and as I was studying this, I just thought, why are they trying to teach primates human language when they have their own language? And, my conclusion at the end was, why don't we get interested about, how primates communicate and try and learn their language?
That's the primary fallacy that's causing all our problems. Everything's oriented to us. Bears want to eat us. No, they don't. Wolves want to eat us. No, they don't. We probably wouldn't taste very good. We're continually focusing everything on us. And I don't know how and where that started. I only know that we have to do everything we can as soon as possible for every reason to start to switch 180 degrees that focus to out around us, that we're part of the whole thing rather than everything coming to us and our that's not quite right, that the focus is us understanding. We can't live that way. It gets us into total chaos and destruction. How do we make that shift? How do we help all of us? Because all of us do it because we are naturally human focused. We have our needs, and those are very strong. Greed and jealousy and sex and food and sleep. They're all very strong. We can't resist them. But we can manage them because we have the brain to begin to put it in a larger perspective and understand that actually plants sleep. There are videos that show them actually sleeping. They have the same fundamental cycles all life does, and that we can learn from instead of trying to exploit or explore. So it's a really fundamental point you brought up. Why don't we look at their perspective?
Well, I feel it comes back to that original point you made about the disconnection. That we've organized our societies based on 400-year-old science. We've created living environments where people are concentrated in cities, where nature interaction with other species is very limited. We've decimated the populations of wild animals. We're in the 6th mass extinction. According to the United Nations program, 150 to 200 species are going extinct every single day.
12% of profit of the land is left for wild animals. We've taken 88% of it, and we're still taking more. That's a shift that has to happen really, 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 really urgently.
Exactly.
And how do we do that is my continuing interest. One of the things I want to do is speak with someone like you. How do we do that before we've taken it all? And then things collapse for all of us.
Well, it comes back to nature's rights. At the moment, human beings have rights, and entities created by human beings, of course, have rights. And they have legal personality. Corporation has legal personality, even though it's just a piece of paper.
Right.
Yet, all of the living beings, their interests are not represented.
Right.
So when something has legal personality, it means that we now need to have them represented in our decision-making structure.
Exactly.
Their needs have to be taken into account. We can't just decide human beings need fossil fuels, and so, we're just going to put an oil refinery here. We've got to consider what are the needs of the other species on the planet, and also what are the needs of our future generations.
It comes basically down to what a wonderful book about everything I needed to know I learned in kindergarten. Have cookies and milk. Share. We don't share. That's the other switch that has to be made.
Absolutely. Yes, sharing. People are so paranoid, that we'll have to make do with less, less than 50 pairs of shoes. I mean, we can share. Not everybody needs to have everything in their one house. And it's this kind of lifestyle that often makes us strangers to each other.
And doesn't make us happy. And we take all the things from the earth in order to try to get more stuff, and we ruin the earth, and we're not happy. If we were happy, maybe it would even be worth it, but we're not.
Right, exactly. And one more point about what can we do about this. It's important to understand that this legal construction of nature as an object is what makes it legal. It's what makes it legal to have an economy that's based on infinite growth. It's what makes it legal to have agriculture that deforests whole areas, a food system where you are raising animals for slaughter and chopping down whole swathes of trees.
It's all not necessary.
Agriculture that uses pesticides that poison the earth, which poison us in turn, poison countless other species. There are so many alternatives, and we've been so creative. There was a time during slavery was in its day, the equivalent of the fossil fuel industry today. People could not envisage what would happen to the economy if slaves were recognized as human beings and they had rights and they were free. But that shift happened. It happened because it's an expression of what is right. It's an expression of natural law. A human being is free, just like a plant is free, just like animals are free. And when that happened, human beings had to become creative, and we created ways of meeting our needs that were much more compassionate and humane and preferable to having slaves, and we built a better society. Now we have reached another threshold where the ways of old, the ways that have served us until now, are not really serving the long-term interests of our species or the integrity of the web of life. And I believe in the human spirit to create, to move forward, and the human heart to have love and compassion for all beings. And this is why I advocate that we recognize living beings as living beings in our legal system, and we bring them in as stakeholders in our Earth community.